Welcome to the Money Shot, Bobby. This is your show, but I have been hosting it a little bit more recently
Yeah.
than or more frequently. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to come up with some ideas and host you on your own show.
I don't even know if you want to host it or not, but I'm just not.
I think I enjoy it. I mean,
Okay.
I'm picking topics sometimes. Sometimes we have guests come in, but we do have a topic to talk about today, which is entrepreneurial moments in your entrepreneurial journey that kind of like changed your DNA. I feel like there was a social media trend a while ago that was like parenting moments that changed my DNA or
Yes.
something like that. And that's where this idea came from.
Okay.
And we have, um, I feel like as we have been growing our community of entrepreneurs, you hear people sharing wins and just talking about these things that like make them feel like they've kind of finally like made it, or there's like a big aha moment that they will forever hold on to, a core memory, I
Yeah.
guess.
Core memory.
So that's what I want us to talk about today. Yours, you share yours, I'll share mine. We'll go back and
Okay.
forth. I'll have you start with one and then I'll do one and then we'll just go back and forth. I've got about five. So I bet you've got five
Yeah. Yeah.
at least.
Yes.
Yes. And I think what will be neat about this is that we've had very different experiences in entrepreneurship, similar but different. I learned that it is not the life for me, but I still had a great time doing it. And it was a really like valuable thing for myself and my family. And it's also something that I think is valuable to Stellar. And then you've had this experience where you have really built a business that you've got a team of people that works for you. There's big long-term plans. So yeah, let's go ahead and start. Bobby, tell me, what is
Let's
the
do it.
first moment as an entrepreneur that changed who you are?
Okay. So the first one was
And I want to be clear, it doesn't have to be like the first you ever experienced. Just give me one of them.
okay. I had this thing for a long time where I was like, man, once I get a lawyer, lawyer and an accountant. Once I get those two things, then I'm gonna feel very legit. And I don't remember what was the first time I got a lawyer for something. I don't have like a lawyer on retainer or anything, but first time I used an attorney was probably to draft up a contract.
Hmm.
Actually, I think it was to review like an affiliate partnership or a sponsorship or something like that for Millennial Money Man.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, this is big boy stuff here. Like I felt really cool. And then now I don't want to talk to attorneys at all because they're so expensive. Like, because the first couple projects I did or things that I asked, it was like, they'd spend like an hour on it or
Hmm.
something like that. And then these days, I feel like when I really need an attorney for something, then they start charging a lot of hours and then it becomes way more expensive. And also there's a ton of back and forth and you got to review stuff and they've got to redline stuff. And then I've had more experiences now where like in the TBL, the bottom line acquisition, like that was a lot of back and forth with attorneys and me reviewing contracts, talking to our attorney about it, her giving me some suggestions, going back, negotiating, wanting things in or out or whatever. Now I'm like, I don't really want to talk to attorneys. And if I could keep them out of it, then I would like to. So that was a full circle,
Yeah.
experience, but it does feel cool the first time you like do it because you feel a little bit more like a legit business owner.
That's a good one. When you said that, the first thing it made me think of, this is not about entrepreneurship, but it's kind of like when a moment where you feel like you've like made it. This is going to sound so silly and it's so small, but I remember when like we first bought our house and we were like, didn't felt like we didn't have any money at all and we were buying like cheap dish soap. And it was like whatever the dollar store had. And like you had to, basically pour like a half cup in the sink to actually do anything. And I hated the smell of it. I was like, I'm going to know that I have financial security when I can regularly buy Dawn dish soap. But we do, I guess the point is like we kind of have these things in our head about like a marker of like success or something,
Yes.
whether it's dish
Yes.
soap or an attorney.
Yeah. I thought it sounded cool when I told people like, oh yeah, my attorney reviewed this thing. Like it made me feel like a lot cooler than I probably was. But yeah. I've had
That's a
those
good one.
moments. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I will say the first one that came to mind for me was so I've like done several things where I was running my own business and it was always no, it wasn't. I was going to say it was always just me, but it was not. I did have employees, like very, I mean, contractors, people who were doing small bits of work for me. But like, I would say this was probably 15 years or so ago. I was had started cleaning houses. I had a friend whose mom cleaned houses, and I was just like looking for something flexible to do. And I was like, I can do this. This is simple work, and it pays pretty well. It's hard work, but it pays well. And I was cleaning houses for about a year, and really like built my business on just word of mouth. I did also have, I actually had flyers up at like the local grocery store that was, if you need cleaning, tear off this number and give me a call. I remember posting on Craigslist as well. I think my mom like shared my information on her like work, bulletin board. But I got to the point where I was making more per month cleaning houses than my husband was as a teacher. And it was like this moment of realizing like I can do this thing that I built solely on my own and be able to like provide for my family in a significant way. And it was just this like eye-opening moment to the potential that's out there for making money. And then it also this is it was like a moment for me as somebody who like had kids young, a woman who like I didn't finish my bachelor's at that point. It felt like this very liberating, like I can provide for myself. Like I don't have to rely on my husband to provide for me. Like I can do this as well if I, needed to. And so that was really neat. And it just really changed how I felt, my understanding of growing a business and working for
Mhm.
yourself and like the potential that's there and really anything as long as you're like willing to go out and have like hard conversations with people, meaning pitching your services and whatnot. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was a big one for me.
That's a cool one. That's a cool
And
one.
I hated cleaning, so it didn't last long.
Yeah. I'm surprised that you did that. I don't know. How long did you do that for?
Probably, I would say like close to 3 years or so. At
That's
the
a long time.
end, it was a long time, and I had been pregnant with one of my sons during that period and had like horrible sciatic nerve pain
Ooh.
and ended up stopping because of that. But I had a couple clients that were like really big, they paid very well, paid over what I charged them. And I kept them for as long as possible because I was like,
Right.
I enjoyed working for them and they paid well. And it was less physically demanding to have, to work for those people. I remember at one point back then thinking like, oh, I could have a team of people but I mean, I was like 25 years old. I like what do I know about any of this at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So, okay. My next one is probably just when I opened my business bank account, my first one. Uh,
Mm,
it was it was just like a Chase business bank account, like
mhm,
I went in and I had saved. What was cool about it to me was that I had saved about $3,000 of my teaching salary,
mhm.
which was about a month's pay. Like it was like a little less than a month's pay. Um, but I didn't even have like a plan or anything like that. I was just like, I need to open an account. And I was like, this seems like a good amount of money to put in there. And it's kind of cool to like, that would have been, I guess, 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And it's cool to look back on that. And I didn't take any like funding or I didn't raise capital or I didn't take any
Right.
business loans or anything like that. It was like my hard earned money. And then to see over the last 10 years that the business has from that $3,000 has like generated millions of dollars in revenue.
Yeah.
Um, that's been really gratifying. And I feel like when it gets like really difficult sometimes that I kind of think back to that moment of like trying to remember what this started from
Mhm.
and like, how much it's grown in 10 years and how much it's probably going to grow in the next 10 years. And then the 10 years after that.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, that's always been like a cool moment to kind of look back on and just, just kind of bring it back to the roots a little bit.
Do you still have that same bank account open?
Yeah, I think I do.
That's
It's
cool.
I don't know how much detail I want to give on this, but it's not the same bank account that we use for the business now. Now we use a different company called RelayFi, which we are not associated with, but we should be at some point because it works well with the profit first system.
Yes.
that we use here at Stellar Brands. And so it's changed multiple times. And honestly, the business has changed multiple times. Like the
Mhm.
LLCs have changed a couple times. So then there's been additional bank accounts I've had to create multiple from that, but I still have that one. It's just not for this business anymore.
Right. Yeah, I have like my checking account is still the checking account that I opened that my
Oh,
mom
that's cool.
opened for me. Like I guess it was a savings account then, maybe it was transition to a checking account, but it's like the same one that I've had forever. And I think that's in part because switching bank accounts can be a real pain in the ass.
Ooh, you know what? I just remembered my Chase was not the first company that I opened a bank account with. It was actually, so what I actually did was I went to a local bank because I've talked about it multiple times. Jim, he was like my
Yeah.
first business mentor. He was like, you get better deals at local banks or like a credit union or something like
Mhm.
that. So I went to a bank that's still there. That's not more than a mile away. And I went in there and I opened an account and everything they had was like, you could only do everything with paper. Like they didn't have an app. They didn't have they didn't have mobile deposit. It was like this very old school,
Yeah.
just hometown bank. Actually, I think
Hmm.
that's what it's called, hometown bank.
That's a great name.
Yeah, and it was just so old school that I only had it for maybe a month because I was like,
Mhm.
okay, this is not going to work for the kind of business that I'm running. If I had been in some kind of like local service based business, it probably would have been fine. But yeah, it didn't work. And so then I went to Chase after that, which has been fine. A lot of people hate on Chase. I think they're I think they're solid. I think it's been
Yeah.
fine. You
Yeah.
know?
I have a Chase account. I haven't had any issues with either. So go
Yeah.
Chase, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
um, So opening the bank account was your next one. All
Yep.
right. My next one that I can think of was the first time that I made a big increase in my freelance editing and writing rates and didn't lose any clients.
Yeah.
This I know we've had some conversations in the community about raising rates and like being prepared to like you have to be in a spot where you are comfortable, like I don't know, comfortable even willing to accept the fact that you might lose clients because you're, raising the rates. And there's a strategic way to do it. And I spent a lot of time researching, like, I've got a handful of clients. Who do I raise the rates on first? How much do I raise the rates? When do I do it? And it like happened over the course of several months that I finally got everybody up to the place that I wanted them to be at. And I think the thing that like stood out for me in it is one, like the amount of like time and research that I put into being very like thoughtful and strategic about it because at that point my editing and writing business was a full-time job for me. Like this was full-time income. And so I couldn't like have a big drop off in clients. And so depending on, how maybe one of them reacted, it maybe would have like changed how I approached subsequent ones. But I didn't lose any clients during it. Like I just raised the rates and it was like so neat to know that my time and efforts were valued the way that I thought they should be valued and that I should be paid for these things. I think I think you were in part of that group when I raised the rates.
I
And
remember it.
what I appreciated was because you asked some questions about it. You were like, "Why are you doing this? Like what is the rationale behind the rate increase too?" And that was something that I had thought of, but you challenged me on that in a way that was like I was like, "Oh no. Like what is going to happen if I don't perform here?" Because that's the other part of it. If you don't like live up to the end like your end of like this is what I'm, worth service-wise, well, you might keep that customer for the initial part of that rate increase but then lose them down the line if you're not delivering. So it's just like a neat experience in like building relationships with clients, the work that goes into working on your business and then being strategic and thoughtful about it and then seeing those like efforts pay off I think was
Yeah.
really very cool.
Yeah, I remember when you raised rates. At that time, I mean, how many years was that? Like 7 years ago or something like that? I feel like it was a long
Probably.
time ago.
Yeah.
I used to take rate increases very personally. I used to really not like them because
Uh-huh.
what I went through this period of time, and it probably had nothing to do with you, but like when I first started hiring contractors, I had quite a few contractors, and it was like it seemed like in the beginning it was just like I was getting good deals on things, and then it
Mhm.
seemed like as soon as I started making more money with the business, then all of a sudden everybody was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
he's making more money, So I'm going to charge him more. And I don't think that you didn't do that. I remember I did ask you for some explanation. You gave me like some very thoughtful responses on why you wanted to do that. But I had some like very contentious kind of like weird ones with other contractors
Mhm.
where it just felt like it's like, okay, I'm not getting anything extra here. And this is a big increase. Like I got some like, 40, 50% increases. And I was like, this changes the relationship for me from being like, this is a great deal to like, now I feel like you're taking advantage of me. Um, I don't look at it that way anymore though. Like
Mhm.
I think back then I just didn't know how things worked and I just took things a lot more personally. Um, Now I just kind of look like if we haven't really had any rate increases.
Knock on
Uh,
wood.
yeah. Yeah, seriously. We haven't had many of those, but I think now I just look at it and I go like, okay, that's fine, but I either have to review my other options or it makes sense. Like my mindset now is like I want people to make more money. Like
Yeah.
I would rather people feel good about what they're doing and I want them to make more money, but then I have to do like the value game. Like what is the
Mhm.
value? Is this something I can replace for a lower cost at the same service? So I think I look at it a little bit more, I don't know, strategically now or less emotionally for sure.
Right.
But yeah, so that's interesting. I do remember yours though, and I remember initially being like, "Ugh," and then you answered the questions. I was like, "Oh, that makes sense."
Well, I'm
So,
glad I'm glad that was your memory of it because
yeah,
if it would have suddenly stirred up some like, "Oh, I forgot about that." That was
no,
the
no,
time I hated Ariel or something. I don't
you've
think you'd
been
say
working with me for 7 years since then.
you're
So
fine.
no, I actually think I just used to have a very immature mindset towards that stuff
Yeah, and
more than I do now.
it's interesting now seeing cost on the back end and realizing everything that goes into cost because when I did those, I certainly wasn't like, well, I may have had like a good explanation for why I'm doing it. I didn't have a spreadsheet that broke down my cost, like software costs, fees, like anything like that. And I don't know that like, I mean, I think that's a good exercise to go through to think about like what your actual costs are as a service based business. But when you're starting out, that is kind of hard to do because you're like, what actually am I paying for? What is a how do I break this down? Um,
Right.
so it's probably a good exercise to start thinking about, but I don't know if it's 100% necessary. You just have to be able to back that up.
Yeah, I think you have to be able to back it up. I had somebody on the podcast. I'm blanking on his name, but he does marketing
Hmm.
and he basically I like the way he explained it. He was like, when we increase prices, we basically look at like the size of the business we're working with, and then we know that most businesses should be spending somewhere between X percent on their
Hmm.
marketing, and we try to fit our prices inside of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a really smart approach. And honestly, like that's the same thing that we basically do with the bottom line. Like we know how much people should probably be paying for accounting and tax and bookkeeping and all of that. And we keep our prices in a range that makes sense for the business owner. So
Right.
they're like, when they're looking at their expenses, accounting isn't like some massive part of their expenses that doesn't make sense. And I think that helps you keep clients longer. But I thought that was a really good and smart way to handle price increases by kind of
Yeah.
making sure it's good for the business owner and it makes sense for
Yeah.
their business.
Yeah. I think that's a good way. And just making sure that you are in the realm of like what other people in your industry and
Yeah.
market are charging too. Okay. So that was my second one.
That was your
What's your
second. So
third one?
I'm on my third one.
Yeah.
Okay, third one. I'm gonna say the first time I hired a full time W-2 employee. That was a big mindset shift for me. I wasn't planning on hiring a full-time person. I actually went into, and this was for head of operations at the time, and I was actually going to do a part-time W2 because I kind of thought that that was all I could afford. And then I had some conversations with Jess here at Stellar Brands,
Hmm.
but at the time she was working with me I was a client at the bottom line, and I'd actually paid for coaching with her as part of the client services, and she worked on my mindset a lot. She was just like, just you need the full time person, like just go for it. And I think what was really difficult for me on that was just like the cost because you know full time employees are expensive,
Yeah.
and payroll becomes the number one expense in your business very very quickly. And she really framed it for me where it was like, you don't have to have like the full year of salary saved up in the bank, like you really need about 3 months
Hmm.
because that's all it takes. Like 90 days is about all it takes to know if that person's going to be a fit or not. So I bit the bullet, I guess, or I don't know. Is that the right way to say? Is that the right way to say
Sure.
that? Is that a
Yeah.
phrase?
That is a
So
phrase. It's a bullet. It sounds weird saying, like thinking about it, but yes, it's a phrase.
yes, okay, yeah. So I took the leap of faith and I did
Oh,
it.
there's another one.
That's a much better one. Took the leap of faith. I did it, and from there it started a the hardest learning experiences that I've ever had in the business, and probably the most difficulty that I've had, but probably the most fulfilling too. Like I feel, I'm not like anti-contractor or anything like that, but I do feel like the path for me
Hmm.
as a business owner, as a leader, I enjoy having full-time employees and part-time employees. I enjoy two people generally more, even though there is more that comes along with it. There's a lot more logistics and then benefits and incentives, all that stuff. Like there's a lot that goes into it, but I think 10, 20 years from now, I'll look back and be like, yeah, that was the right decision, because I never felt very comfortable just having a contractor team, because I always just felt like we weren't a team kind of going on a journey together. It felt very like I get a little slice of their time and they've got a bunch of other clients and I'm just kind of like one of many.
Hmm.
Um, and they didn't treat you that way necessarily, but you could kind of feel it, like
Yeah.
you kind of knew that you were kind of in this alone, and these people were just kind of helping you, but they weren't like your team. And so, from there, obviously we've expanded and we have 5 employees now. And I see a day where we have 100 or more.
Hmm.
It's just, to me, it's just a matter of time. And then, then I feel like I want that, but I'm like, do I really want that? But I think I do, because I think it's kind of the direction that I want to take the business. So that was a very long, windy answer, but it was just a big mindset shift for me. And it was the leap of going from a solopreneur, where I was always going to be the focus of the business. I wasn't building an asset necessarily. I was always going to be like, I had a really nice job. And there's nothing wrong with that, because like I have friends that do it and they make great money and they have far less like people stress and just logistics and all that kind of stuff. But I think that your upside is limited pretty significantly. And
Yeah.
so if you have the risk tolerance and the pain tolerance thresholds necessary, then it was just better for me. And I made a lot more sense long term what I wanted to build.
Yeah, and I think you talking about us shifting at Stellar to a W-2 employee team doesn't mean that we won't have contractors. We have
Yeah, we
contractors.
have
Like,
them
we
now.
always have contractors to some extent. We have people who are, do things for us every month. We've had people who do one-off projects for us. And I think it's like, what I hear from all of that is like finding the right style of team for the business that you want to build and like what you want out of your business.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. It is definitely a style thing. It's a lifestyle thing for sure.
Hmm.
Because when I talk to my friends that don't have employees, they do have significantly more freedom.
Right.
In some ways, like they do and they don't. Like I can take off time and I know that the business is still going to run without
Hmm.
me. They probably can't to the same extent, but they have a lot more time freedom throughout the week.
Hmm.
And they're not as responsible. Like having employees is it can be a very heavy load, because you feel like those guys that I know, guys and ladies that I know that have that, they can like turn off their computer and they're kind of like, they worry about the business, but it's a little bit different. Like I am concerned about my employees and their families and their long-term livelihoods. And it's like, there's just a lot that you
Yeah.
carry a lot, but it doesn't actually bother me that much. And I think that you do have to have like a certain, I said pain tolerance, but it's not even that. It's just like you just have to have like a certain makeup to where it's like those things don't really bother you a ton. Like you're fine with the responsibility of it. But
Right.
it's definitely a lifestyle shift.
Yeah, and I think the trade-off, like from what I've seen since being here, is that the buy-in you get from a W-2 employee versus a contractor is so much different. It's like you
Yeah.
people that want to build things with you, like alongside you, almost partner in that. Whereas contractors could be, they're like, I'm here, I support you, cool what you're doing, but I have other things that I'm doing also. Not that this
Yeah.
isn't important. And that's totally fine.
They have their own business. Like they're trying to grow their business, so it's like
Right.
they have their baby and you have yours. And yeah, so I think it's been good. I feel very strongly that we are in a, I've told you this before. We are in a difficult, like having a small group of employees, I feel like is very difficult because every problem, every I don't know, every issue that comes up uh, is very close to you. Like
Mhm.
you are very aware of all of the things that happen. And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about employees, but this is just a reality for people that are listening. Like when you have a small team, you're very aware of everything that everybody thinks about all the time. And I've heard this many times, but once you grow to a bigger team size, then you as the business owner continue to get a little bit further removed from that. And then maybe at some point you have like a full HR department and like the idea of an employee leaving, like right now, an employee leaving would hurt a lot in a lot of ways. Like it would hurt emotionally, but it would also like make it's difficult in the business because you've got to replace that person. But as you get bigger and bigger, it's like then you're used to churn and
Mhm.
you're used to some of the issues that come up. And so like I've always heard that it's like you have freedom and then you start hiring employees, you lose a lot of your freedom, but if you hire enough of them, you kind of regain your freedom again.
Mhm.
So it's a
Yeah, that makes sense.
so but it's also just kind of like a leverage thing. And I don't know, the business at some point kind of more runs itself and it creates that machine, but there is a big gap between solopreneur and then there's like a big divide, like a canyon, and then there's like the payoff,
Mhm.
like the long-term payoff. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
a good one.
that's yeah.
My third one is this is going back to when I was cleaning houses and I mentioned that I had like a few clients. I think I've told you this story before, Bobby. But I had a few clients that were just really good clients. They paid well. As I said a minute ago, like paid me, I think it was like I was charging them $75 to clean their house. And this one client in particular always paid me 300, like never less than $300. And I was like, are we confused about what I'm charging you? And he was just like, no, I think, this is what I want to pay you for this. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to argue with that. And that client, when I went on maternity leave, eventually he wrote me a big ass check for maternity leave. He basically paid for my maternity leave.
That's
I had
cool.
set aside money so that I would be fine, and then he wrote me this check. It was like $2,000, which was like significant. And
Yeah.
on the memo line, it said like "Happy Baby," and he was
Oh
just like, "And now you got to come back, after maternity
yeah.
leave. I don't want to lose you." And I helped find somebody to like replace me during that period when I was gone. But why that moment stands out to me is that it was like it was such a strong reminder in the value in building relationships with people. And that when you are working as, a service provider, you are not just providing a service, you are building a relationship with somebody and you have to take care of that relationship. And so one of the reasons that I think that he and I worked for so well, so long together was that he was a very private person. He was a public person. And I respected that, privacy. And, I would always ask him, like, oh, if there's anything else that you need from me, let me know. And there were times where he was out of town and I'd like come over and take in his mail, that kind of thing, or check on his
Yeah.
house. And I offered, and he was not like just taking advantage of that time or anything. And I really cared about him and he cared about me and I asked about his family and he asked me about mine. And it was just a really neat thing, like to see those efforts in building that relationship because that can be draining. Like you were just talking about employees being like, there is a lot of, it is a weighty thing.
Hmm.
And it does feel sometimes like when you get close in those relationships, even if it's like a service provider, getting close in those relationships, it adds more weight and it can add more stress and everything potentially. But the payoff can be so significant, and that was like a financially significant payoff, but also as an individual, like that, like personal win of like this person values me so much. Like that is
Right.
priceless what you get from that. And so that just like kind of always solidified that, or that was the moment that solidified that lesson of why relationships are so important in what you're doing as a business owner. You don't want to lose those things, those good relationships for sure.
Yeah. That's a good one. Am I on my fourth? I'm on my fourth one now.
You're on your fourth one, yeah.
I think this is after I hired employees, but I think like a year, it might have been a year and some change after I hired my first employee and then we brought you on as an employee. We basically ran out of money in the business. It was like, it was a really, I had hired people probably a little bit too early. We really didn't have many revenue streams. Like it was pretty like startup y where it was like, okay, we're going
Mm-hmm.
to try to build this stuff. And we basically got to a point, we did a new website and the website cost like, I think the website cost like 50 grand or something like
Yeah.
that. It was like 40 to 50 grand. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And I thought I had it all timed out perfectly when the payments were going to hit and everything. And I was like, I was like, we've got just enough money and I'm going to be able to like pay this. And then like the website stuff will hit on the first of the month. And this was like the end of the year. So it'll be like 1st of January. Then we have this other money coming in. And I thought I had it mapped out. And then they sent the invoice like a week earlier than I thought they would. And they wanted it paid by the end of the year. And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if that was an oversight for me or if they were just trying to make sure they got their revenue by year end for tax purposes or whatever. But it was like I saw it and I was like, holy crap, we don't have any money. I was just like, is this is brutal. And we still didn't have like this. We still didn't have these like for sure things that were generating
Mm-hmm.
revenue consistently for us. And so I basically decided like I'm not going to take on debt. I'm not gonna like put myself in a bad position here, but I am going to put my own money back into the company. And that was the first time since my teaching, putting my teaching salary stuff in there. That was the first time that I had to like ever reinvest money into the company in
Yeah.
order to keep it afloat. And that was like it was very scary. Now it wasn't like I put all of my money into it or something, but like I basically put enough for us to kind of it bought us like 2 or 3 months, something like
Yeah.
that. And it got real dark because like after I did that, we burned through probably a third of it the first month, and we were going to burn through the next third, and we weren't getting ahead, and I was like, oh my god, like am I going to have to put more money into the company? Like am I going to have to let the employees go? Like am I going to have to change course? And then from all of that, what I've learned, and I've learned this lesson many times in business, it was like February, I think, of the next year. We were real low on cash. We were on a retreat. And then one of our affiliate partners reached out to us literally at that retreat. And we negotiated a much better deal than what we had. We were already sending them traffic, but it was pretty minimal what was happening with them. And that one deal alone, like it changed the business dramatically. And it was like this very magical kind of like if you just keep going, you catch a break eventually.
I remember being on that retreat when that happened, and it was like, I don't know, you or somebody else checked their email and got this news, and we immediately went out for oysters. And did we
Yes.
have champagne too? I mean, it
I
was,
think so. That was like one of the highlights of business for me so far in the last 10 years. I mean, that was like, it was just like the relief and we were all super excited. And it was like,
mhm.
you think about the possibilities now and, my investment paid off or
Yeah,
reinvestment paid off. And, like I've had great times in the business since then. We've had difficult times in the business. Like that's just how business goes. Like you
yeah.
have the ups and downs, but I've kind of just noticed the trend over the years of like when things don't look good, if you just keep going and keep trying for long enough, eventually things do go your way. And that's something I've talked to other business owners about that. And like, that's a very common trend. And I don't know, I mean, you can think of it like religiously, like that's God intervening or it's the universe or whatever you believe. Or it might just be like a statistical probability that if you keep working, then eventually good things will happen. But I've noticed that trend. And so now when things get a little dicey, which happens as you build a team, that's kind of the other thing is like that it wouldn't have been a big deal if I didn't have employees,
Mhm.
like if I didn't have increased expenses. But like the more you grow your team, like the more downside risk there is as well. And so it's like even if you're super careful with your finances or whatever, it's like the economy changes, things happen. But if you just try to like push through and don't do anything stupid, and like, if you do that, then you'll be fine. And that's what I've just noticed has happened over and over again, even since that moment. But it probably happened several times before too.
When you were reinvesting at that point, did you believe that it was going to work out, or were you just kind of like, fingers crossed? I don't know.
I probably had I just had like an innate belief that things would work out. And I used to be better about that than I am now,
Hmm.
which is kind of interesting. Like, and I'm trying to get back to that mindset, and I've
Yeah.
been working on that a lot for like the last, probably year or so, just because I, when you haven't really like been in bad situations very often, you kind of you're kind of, I don't even know the word naive, I guess, about it. And you're just like, yeah, it's going to be fine. And so I think when I did that, I was like, well, this will either work or it won't, and then I'll figure it out after that. Now I think
50
I would,
chance.
yeah, now I think I would just be a lot more strategic about it. But I have noticed like, after that, I was a lot more paranoid, probably for the year after that happened, where I
Hmm.
was like, I worried about things a lot more. And I feel like I've come out of that now where I'm like, yeah, things are just going to be fine. And that's what
Yeah.
has ended up happening. So yeah, I don't know if I necessarily even thought it all the way through. I had like a plan that I would put money in again. I think I was going to do it like two more times if I had to. And then I was going to
Hmm.
like change course or something. But, I ended up not having to do that. And I haven't had to do it again since,
Yeah.
which has been
Yeah.
cool. So,
That is cool.
and that deal brought a lot of great things to the business for us,
Hmm.
which is really kind of amazing. Like it's kind of interesting that it all worked out the way that it did.
I think what's so neat about it too is, I mean, um, and we can cut any of this if it's like too much information, but I feel like that deal at that point was part of our business model. And it
Yeah.
is no longer part of our business model, but it has allowed us to build the business that
Mhm.
you wanted to build, that like knew that this is what Stellar would be. And it's like, I don't know, there's something like kind of magical about that, that
Yeah.
it's like, it, it's like the universe was like, Bobby, you are meant to do this. That's how I would see it. That's how I would take it if it were me in that situation. Like
Yeah.
you are ordained to or destined or something for this. You have to make it
Yeah.
happen.
That's one way to look at it. And
That's a lot of pressure,
I've
but
thought about it. I've thought about it that way too. I'm like, okay, this must be what I'm supposed to do. But I also have felt like if it is like the universe, it's like the universe basically was like, we're going to do this, but I'm going to kick your ass first and I'm going to beat you down. And then you can go do it. And so like, that's kind of what
giving
it
you
felt
work
like.
for it or something.
Yeah. But every bad time I've gone through in business, it always prepares me for something later down the road. Like
Yeah.
I've always been able to draw, because like in the last 10 years, like I've probably almost gone out of business like three or four times.
Hmm.
In the early days, like every month I was almost going out of business. There's just now, like when we run into certain situations, like I'll just have this like random, like, oh yeah, I'm the last time we were, you know, when I was struggling with whatever, I learned this thing, and now it like kind of oddly applies to things that we're doing now, and that's been cool. So yeah, I mean, I guess you can kind of choose to look at it however you want. I do
Hmm.
kind of feel a little bit of like manifest destiny sometimes, where it's like this is going to happen, but then there's some days where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this to myself? Even though I know this is going to work out long term, I'm like, ah, dang, this sucks right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've made it through every single one of those moments.
Yeah. Very cool. So my next one, I feel like there's some like kind of similar themes in here of like making it happen. But my next one is, so I had started doing freelance writing and editing while I had gone back to school to finish my bachelor's as a returning learner, which I hate that name, but that's what they call it in education. And I had gone back and I had started doing writing freelance on the side of, I was working other jobs and stuff in school. And as I was getting close to graduation, I was like, I've got student loans. I need to pay these student loans off. I need to provide for my family. I don't want to be working, you know, three jobs. And I was like, I think that this freelance work that I'm doing is something that can be a full-time income. And I think I knew that was possible because of that experience cleaning houses and knowing that there's potential there. And so after I graduated, you have, I don't know, what is it, like a 3 month grace period to start paying back student loans or something. And
Yeah.
I was like, I have 3 months to get my freelance business like to the point where this is realistically going to be a full-time income. Because at the time that I didn't want to work a real, like, quote unquote, real job, 9 to 5, like I do right now.
Hmm.
This doesn't always feel like a real job in terms of like the corporate real job, but it is a
Right.
9 to 5 job. And I thought that I didn't want that. I thought I wanted to work for myself. And so I was like so committed to making the freelance work happen that I took opportunities. Like I was good at identifying here's an opportunity, go take it. I was also very willing to do any kind of work that was, possibly within that realm. I did some weird types of editing and writing work. I remember there was a nonprofit that I worked with and edited a book of poetry for them. And also, she was like, "Oh, can you format it too?" And I was like, "Sure, I can do that." And I had no idea what that was, but I figured out how to do it because I was like, "I have to make this happen. I have to get up to like this certain amount in revenue to feel like this is full time. This is what I'm doing." And it wasn't so much the part of it that I think is like the core memory of it isn't that I was able to make it happen. It was the if you feel like this is something that you have to do, that there is like no way that you won't fail at it. Like you are going to have difficulties along the way. And like, I didn't do things like pay quarterly estimated taxes, which, that wasn't smart. So I wasn't like doing it perfectly the whole time and certainly had like some hiccups. But like just knowing like if I am determined enough to do this thing, I can make anything happen. And I think that in running your own business, like there's something a little bit delusional about that belief, you know,
Yeah.
but it is kind of like you need that kind of like, I think in the early days, especially like a little bit of like delusion is good. Like you need that kind of that all powerful, like I can do anything, I can defeat anything. Because without it, like I wouldn't have pitched clients. I wouldn't have gotten comfortable with pitching clients. I wouldn't have gotten comfortable with like working jobs, taking on clients or contracts that I wouldn't normally have done. And I learned so much through that. Like the idea of just knowing, getting comfortable with pitching clients, and to the point where like I'd pitch anybody. I didn't care because I knew that this is just part of what you need to do to survive. And it really was like a survival thing for me. And learning that I can do anything that I put my mind to was really powerful for sure.
Yeah. No, I think you're right about the delusion part. I mean, it's true. I think there's so many things that can go wrong when you start a business, and I feel like it depends on the kind of business you're starting,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're starting a business in one of the ways that we teach people how to start businesses, where it's like a service based business or whatever.
Yes. And that's
Like,
exactly what I was doing.
yeah, I mean, you still need to have this like kind of delusion of like I can make it, but like the reality is there's such lean businesses, like there's
Hmm.
so little on the startup costs, like you don't have to do a whole lot right to be fine. But when you start to try to grow your business, or if you start a business where you have to take on debt to start it or take on investment or whatever, raise funds, the chances of failure are so much higher.
Yeah.
Like the more that you try to do, the bigger you try to grow, the more bad things happen all the time, and most of your life is kind of bad things happening to you constantly, but you do have to have this like delusion of like, I can do this. Like it's gonna be
Hmm.
fine. It's not gonna like put me in financial ruin, or it's not gonna ruin my life in some way or burn me out or whatever. And I think you have to have that kind of, at any level, you have to have that mindset of this is gonna work. This is gonna work, and
Yeah.
it's gonna, nothing bad's gonna happen. And then, over time, you just kind of get used to bad things happening all the time. There's actually an Alex Hormozy quote that was like, I thought it was really good, where he was like, no matter what stage I'm in the business, I feel pain. He's like, when I was
Hmm.
starting, I felt pain. When I was growing, to like 7 figures, I felt pain. When I was trying to grow to 8 figures, every step of the way, I felt some level of pain, and it's constant. So I just don't worry about it anymore.
Hmm.
Like it's kind of like a dark thing when you really think about it, but it's very true. It's like it doesn't matter if you're crushing it. Like
Yeah.
if you're crushing it, you're adding more people and you're adding more things, and there's more complexity and there's pain there. Or if your business is struggling, like there's pain there, but you just kind of get used to it, and it just becomes your new normal, and then it's just like fine, you know?
Yeah. And I mean that like all of that resonates very much with kind of like my mindset back then, because I started telling myself, and this is like very dark, but I was like, this isn't going to kill you. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're not going to die from this. And maybe that's not dark, but like the fact that, you know,
The
putting
fact that you
death
even
in
have to
there,
think that you have
right,
to go
that is
there.
kind of
Yeah.
dark. And I think it was like, it felt that there was, that intensity was there because I was trying to do it in like such a short amount of time. Like I wanted by this certain period to be to a certain point, to feel confident in like, you know, what I was doing moving forward. And so yeah, I mean it was really freaking painful at times and
Yeah.
like stressful, and I worked a lot of hours and did a lot of things that I like was very uncomfortable with at first, but it was like every time that I did one of those things and there was like a payoff, or and the payoff could just be like that I got through it. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, I made a lot of money from that, you know, client or contract or whatever. And but it was like I didn't die. Cool. Like moving
Right.
forward, keep going. And I mean, now sitting in here where I'm at with Stellar, like there are certainly moments where it is like, okay, this isn't going to kill us or me or whatever. But I think that I felt much more of that, like I need to be just know that there's going to be pain, but it's not going to kill me. It was very much kind of like the startup early stages of a
Yes.
business mentality.
Yes. Yes. I'm going to try to end on a positive one because I feel like we've, at least I focus, I feel like I do that a lot where when I'm talking about business, I talk about the, like the pain aspect of it and like how hard it is and all that stuff. And I feel like I do that because I want people to understand that like that is a real thing.
Yeah.
And I've never liked the internet marketing where it's like, you know, people standing in front of jets
Mm-hmm.
and in their Ferrari that they're renting or whatever, and like selling this just like crazy lifestyle that those people don't even really live. And
Right.
actually, funnily enough, like I was sharing in a group thread with some of my friends, like Ty Lopez, you know, Ty
Mm-hmm.
Lopez.
Yeah.
The SEC just, I don't know, like, I guess they charged him with a Ponzi scheme because
Ooh.
he was going out. Now this is all alleged,
Uh-huh.
so I don't know if this happened or not, but basically they were saying he went and bought like Radio Shack and I think Pier 1 and some of these other like old legacy brands that had
Mm-hmm.
been bankrupt. And they said that what he did was he raised a bunch of money from investors, pocketed a bunch of the money for himself, and then the businesses were actually failing and losing money. And so he got new investors to come in to help continue paying the expenses and then pay
Ooh.
the old investors,
Oh
which is like that's the
man.
Ponzi scheme.
Yes.
And but he is like the first one that was like he was like in his garage with a Lamborghini and a bookshelf behind him saying if you just read all these books, I read 100 books a year or whatever. You know, he's like the poster child for that kind of
Right.
marketing, and I think he's the one that kind of set it off. And I've never really enjoyed. I've always just felt dirty about that. Like
Yeah.
it's business is so fulfilling. It's so amazing. You have great wins, and they just feel
Mm-hmm.
so good because you've worked so hard. But like, it's not that all the time. Like it's
Right.
very rarely ever that. And so I've just never felt good about that. But I do feel like I go on the dark side a little bit too much sometimes. But my last one is actually a very recent one, and I was trying to think you know, I've got all these like preloaded stories that I've told over the years where it's
Mm-hmm.
like we did a course launch for Facebook Side Hustle and we did 140,000 in a weekend, and I pitched my first digital marketing client 10 years ago and
Mm-hmm.
basically replaced my teaching salary and I didn't even know what I was doing. Like, those are cool stories, but I had a very recent one that was like it was a good reminder for me. I was talking to my mother-in-law about just business stuff. And I was talking to her about some things I want to do someday. And she basically, she's always told me this, but she was just, you know, I was kind of like complaining about some stuff or just like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. And she was just like, dream bigger, like keep dreaming bigger.
Oh.
And it was cool because like she doesn't talk to me about that kind of stuff like very often, but when she
Yeah.
does, I listen. And one of the things she told me was that her and you know her husband passed several years ago, but she was like, we never dreamed big enough. Like we
Mm.
just she's like, if I could go back, I would have dreamed even bigger. And she
Yeah.
reminded me of that last week. And it was just a good reminder for me because I feel like in the business, like, I mean, you and I are in the day-to-day grind all the time of it. And it's like, it's very easy to be like, maybe we just keep it this size. Like maybe we just keep it where it is, you know, like
Right.
maybe we're good where we are. But then, you know, I was kind of talking about something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what it was, but she was just like, no, like keep dreaming, dream bigger. And it kind of got me out of that. And I was like, yeah, no, we got some big stuff to do here. And that was it was just a cool reminder. And I think I think it's good to have people like that in your life when
Yeah.
you're building a business that can just kind of get you to step back a little bit and
Hmm.
not focus so much on the now, but like where you want to go and where you can go. And it's nice to
Yeah.
have people that like believe in you too. So I don't know. That was just a cool thing that happened about a week ago.
Yeah, that is a really neat thing. And I think I think what you do learn, like, your mother-in-law saying that to you, like, if that were said to me, I feel like I would hear that and realize that all of the experiences that I had, those hard ones where I'm like, as long as I'm not going to die, I'm fine, is a, like, you can use those experiences to realize that when, if you do dream bigger, that you actually can achieve those things.
Mhm.
Like, the dream that I had to, you know do be like a full-time solopreneur, that was what I that was my dream. It was not the biggest dream, but it was a big dream at the time to me, and I made it happen. And so then, just like, okay, well, now I've reached this phase, let me have a bigger dream beyond
Yeah.
that. And like, just know, like, stair stepping it, and knowing that, like, you can actually do these things. That's really cool. That's great advice from her. I'm
Yeah.
glad you got that from her. I'll leave on a positive note too with mine. I think the thing that, like, and this isn't one moment, but like a collection of moments, is really when I was freelancing, being able to, my kids were younger. Like, I mean, my youngest is 14 and in high school, and there's really not a lot that, besides after school activities, there's not a lot of, like, he doesn't need me during the day. He doesn't need me during the evening or ever really for anymore. Like, they're basically self-sufficient people. I joke that is, they do need you. But um, where I was going with this is that when I was freelancing full time when they were little, I had so much flexibility to, it was like, let's go to the park today. Let's go to the zoo. Let's go visit grandma. Let's go do this. Like, that was so neat. And I was in control of my schedule. So obviously, if we went to the zoo for a couple hours and I thought I was going to do some work, I would do that later on. You have to adjust your time to make that flexibility work for you. But it was just a really neat way to be present in my kids' lives in a way that I don't think I would have been able to if I had been going to work in an office 9 to 5 every day.
Yeah.
It was when they were in preschool. And so they were like doing half days or 2 days a week. And then in elementary school, when it was like nice to volunteer in your kid's school and be there for drop off and pick up. And yeah, I really appreciated that. And I think what's really neat about what, Stellar is that, because I think you very much like the flexibility of, you want to be with your family. We were talking recently about meetings getting scheduled during nap time, and that we need to get away with that, or try to move away from that as much as possible, because that's important for you to do. And not
Yeah.
just because you want that time with your kids, but like for you and your wife, the way that, you've got your day-to-day scheduled, like, you need to be able to participate in that. And I think because everyone in this business has worked freelance or run their own business at some point, like, we all understand those things, the
Right.
benefits that come from that kind of work, and can build a culture here that, like, supports that still, which
Yeah.
I think is pretty incredible. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. It's like, I was talking about dreaming bigger. There's always
mhm.
a price that comes with bigger, like
Yeah.
in a business. Like there's a price that you have to pay to get to where you want to be. But
Hmm.
my kind of non-negotiable has been my kids. Like
Yeah.
I see a lot of entrepreneurs and it doesn't make any sense to me, but like where they're just like, yeah, I wanted to build the business to be so big and I didn't have time with my kids and that was a sacrifice I was willing to make. And I've heard like Patrick Bet David is a person that's talked about that where he was like, I sacrificed time with my kids because I wanted to show them what was possible.
Mm.
And I thought that was really like it made sense. I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. But for me personally, like that is a sacrifice I'm not willing to make.
Yeah.
That like when they're in college or whatever, like maybe I'll want to be doing more things that take me away from my family. I doubt it, but like that's the one where it's like I still get to see my kids every single day, and that's been really cool. And it's cool that the business is that way, and then we're all able to like have that flexibility. So yeah, just kind of
Yeah.
a
Love
little add
that.
on there.
Love it. All right. Well, we each gave you
5.
all our top five moments of, working for ourselves, building a business, running a business, starting a business. So I would love to hear if anybody wants to share what theirs are, what their moments have been so far. We would love to hear from you. And if you want to share any topics that you'd be interested in us talking about, any types of guests that you'd be interested in us having on, or if you yourself want to be a guest, we would love to hear from you. So please share with us. You can reach us at hello@stellarbrands.com. You can drop a comment in the YouTube video. And thanks for listening and watching and joining along with us. And we'll talk soon. Bye.